Ho, 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 this is Slurp Bofa coming to you live from the Deprogram sweatshop deep in the bowels of the earth. With consumption season in full swing, your favorite podcasters are here to help. We've assassinated the CEO of North Pole LLC, Santa Claus, and are now capitalistically producing anti-capitalist products made by the nimble hands of fully unionized children. Elves. This season's drop reeks of versatility, suitable for all sorts of critical life events, from corporate Christmas parties, to weddings, paramilitary clandestine operations, or even dinner dates, if any of you are capable of finding love. Our flying reindeer are currently on loan as an organic vegan alternative to military drones, bringing down the average CO2 emissions of a payload delivery to almost zero. The many brave private military companies flying over Syria right now couldn't be happier with the service, so this year, we hope a classic human delivery man will suffice. If you're lucky, it might even be Hakeem, with an extra package for you. Follow the link below, get dripped out, consume ironically, support the show, and make family gatherings extremely awkward. Patrons, as always, get a discount, because class society or something. Happy holidays from all of us here at the Deprogram.
Aside from, we were just discussing merch, which you can purchase at a lovely web store.
Oh wait, we're recording? What the fuck?
Titled deprogramshop.com. What is it?
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
It's gonna be super freaky because it already starts with an ad pitch, with the merch pitch.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, they can do ads. It's all right. Speaking of merch or drip, Hugo's been killing it with with these fucking fit. What is the
Very
Sticky
clean.
Bandits ass fit?
I had a stream earlier and I had two groups of people, some from the Middle East and some from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And the Eastern European people are like, "Are you recording from the fucking Ukrainian front?" And the Middle Eastern people are like, "Bro, did you just overtake Syria? Like, did you oust Assad?"
Do you know?
Like, holy shit. Well, the eternal masked fit. And then we had Luigi. Like, everybody's copying me, I feel like.
exactly.
Entire armies, assassins, like it's
Hugo did it first.
Hugo did
guys
the
who didn't do
militia.
it.
Hey, he's saying
not.
not guilty. He's saying not guilty,
Exactly.
and his lawyer is like, "What moiters? It's great. I love it."
This man's a hero. He's an Italian
Yeah.
hero. One thing is, Habibi, you look like you're about to go fire an RPG-7 at the siege of Sarajevo. That's like the fit.
In both directions. I'm fucking ending this right now.
Oh my god.
I want it to be Christmassy. That's why I want it to be
Habibi, you
Christmassy,
look
to be a
beautiful.
bit more cozy. And I've been having a very bad hair day, hence the hat. And it kind of works. It's without the mask, it would be a very like podcaster look. You know, the classic beanie that's above the ear that I've lately started to really fuck with. But it makes no sense when it's actually cold outside. Like, your ears are falling off. So I don't know what those New York hipsters that have inspired me have been doing all these years. But
Aesthetics over everything.
I
gotta have that orange beanie.
The audience needs to know. Yugopnik is the only person who's done street fashion and not looked to try hard. He is so naturally fucking stylish, this dude. Mashallah alayh. I remember when we met up. No, genuinely, when we met up, this dude waking up for fucking breakfast.
He had it on. I tell you.
Yeah.
what.
but that thank you, lovely compliment. But like, my fits during summer suck. Like, they suck. I don't know how to dress
You still
during
killed
summer.
it. You still killed it, Habibi.
You're too kind. They also, both of them also dress very well. Hakeem
My
is
Peter Griffin
Hakeem is extremely elegant. Hakeem is extremely elegant, and JT isn't wearing a pajama, which for an American is literally high fashion.
Alhamdulillah.
So I'm like, fantastic. I love
Thanks.
No,
it. No,
genuinely.
he also dresses really well.
Clears the bar.
Joke.
Yeah, no,
I dress,
no.
according to Hakeem, like a Honduran fruit salesman. So, thank you.
Every single day, it was different shades and patterns of the same fit.
It's a
I love
camp
it.
collar shirt and nice short shorts.
They look really good. Oh boy, his lovely mozzarella thighs. Did I want to take a bite? Oh my lord.
Yeah.
Thanks,
genuinely.
partner. Thanks.
They're very attractive. I mean, JT you can see, but Hakeem, like, unironically is very attractive.
Habibi,
and
thank you.
and as my hair gets rarer and rarer, I'm getting more and more jealous of just how
Habibi.
thick that shit is. That is a full set of hair. And
Thank
he's
you.
the one that's using an avatar that's literally fucking
Right.
balding.
Right?
Thank you. Say mashallah, please.
Mashallah.
I had a intro topic, and it's a question for JT. JT. Because JT is from the cringe Protestant tradition, while Yugotnik is from the Chad Orthodox. So their Christmas isn't happening yet, but JT's Christmas has happened. And he
Not
was telling
yet,
me,
almost.
Oh, almost. Well, yeah. And he was telling me about the meats, the roasted meat. I joked that it was a honeyed ham, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not far off." Which, hey, that makes me glad I got cultural brownie points. I will not be sent to the camps.
We will not bury you under what's it called, Gateway Church in Grapevine, Texas, the mega church.
Exactly right. With the donkey that shit itself.
That was a different church. That's White's Chapel in South Lake, Texas.
It sounds pretty white to me. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, what I was gonna say was, in Thanksgiving, from what I understand, there's the turkey. And for some reason, it's the big burly man of the house who has the knife cutting privileges because women can't be trusted around knives or something. I don't know how it works, but the man is supposed to cut the meat, the bird. Or am I wrong?
I would say it's generally the person who cooks the bird cuts the bird.
Okay.
Yeah. Which maybe traditionally, especially in the feel good movies, the Hallmark movies and stuff, is the burly man.
That's my entire exposure to American culture. By the way.
Sometimes
they wait for once a year. Once a year they cook. Which I am pointing out and making fun of the Americans, but literally for my girlfriend's birthday, that's the one time a year I cook.
What a guy!
I do it from time to time, but it's usually when. I don't like what she made.
Have you mix did
I say that?
No, I didn't.
Oh my god! You mix drinks, okay? That's your domain, mashallah. Here's my question.
Go on.
Does the big burly man privilege of cutting the meat extend to cutting the holiday ham on Christmas? Yes. Is it also the man of the house who's supposed to cut it?
Oh yes. Right. This is tradition. You sometimes, if we're feeling extra fancy, we even get out the vibrating knife that goes zzz, and you basically just go straight through it
like butter.
Like butter. We don't actually have one of those. I didn't know those were a thing till I saw them in someone's store. I was like, what the hell is that? It's like a little chainsaw knife.
I don't think I've ever seen one, but I love using them in games like Fallout, Cyberpunk. I'm always running around with the little chainsaw. I love how most like RPGs like put in a crazy amount of work, especially those where you can fire stuff. Put in crazy amount of work to scale guns and for you to be able to use many guns. And almost always they kind of leave melee weapons to the side.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, that looks very simple. That's what I'm using. And I'm just running around with a sledgehammer. There's fucking advanced ninja robots that can like turn invisible and can like jump. I'm like just running around with a sledgehammer. Like it's
way more fun.
12th century.
That's way more fun.
Come to Santa Claus, motherfucker. And it always works. It always works. And it's extra satisfying because like, dude, you just modified your whole body to be a super soldier, but you still lose to Le Hammer.
Bonk.
Le Bonk.
I'm sorry to bring us back to this very incredibly important. JT is my American cultural expert right here. He's my cultural attaché. The next question I have is, what is the thing that you use to insert or introduce gravy into the bird? It's like a big sex toy.
Yes.
What is
the
it?
Turkey butt plug. Yes.
What the frick is that?
It is a turkey baster, is the professional term.
And
you fill it with fluids.
Of course. Okay.
What was the first guy that did that
there.
thinking? What the fuck was the first guy thinking?
He had some ideas that he just wanted to try out.
You shoot ropes into the bird and then what? Like it's supposed to like steam.
Look,
and keep it moist?
The corpse of a bird. It's kind of fucked up. Like
my guess is that it's a big bird, right? You got a lot of meat through there, so if you just put stuff on the outside,
you got a lot of meat yourself,
it ain't gonna taste right all the way through. So you gotta shove a syringe up where the sun don't shine. Pardon my French, and blast it with whatever liquids you got on hand. I don't know what goes in there.
And what's the there's like a bready
stuffing.
Yeah.
Some people call it
crumble or some shit, or am I getting my wife?
Chelsea calls it something else. Those.
All I know is that if I was American and I was doing that, as I was inserting it, I would look my wife straight in the eye, as I'm pressing it, winking, and be like, what about tonight? And
exactly.
Yes.
You're the devil. Yeah. What is it called? I'm racking my brains.
It's called having sex with your wife?
I wouldn't know.
The only one of us who's fathered children.
welcome to yet another annual episode of the Deprogram Rewind. I cannot believe, boys, that it has been full 3 years.
Absolutely.
And for some of you that have been, I guess, so distance from grass touching that have actually been following us for 3 years,
We love you.
you might remember that annually, every single year, when it ends, we do something incredibly original, something that nobody on any platform does, similar to our sand nudes and many other different deprogram categories. We rewind the year and we talk about the biggest events, at least the events that have touched us the hardest and touched the rest of you also very hard. I hope your uncle is not in the room right now. Anyways, welcome to yet another Deprogram episode. Thank you to all the patrons that support us. If you want to support the channel, please check out the link below. If you want to check out the new fucking dripping ass merch, also check the link below.
Hey.
Now, let us start. We separated the whole year month by month, and then we separated those months amongst the three of us. We're going to go through the events that we consider were the most important from the past year. When I read through the stuff that the boys wrote and that I wrote, it's been a long year. It's been a big year.
There's been a lot of stuff.
Big year for content, bro. A lot of content. Peak content year. Yes, we have Trump back, but he's not as entertaining as like 4 years ago. So 2024 might be remembered as the peak content year. Most likely because next year we will all die in a nuclear holocaust. But even if we don't, it's been quite a ride. And I'm sure that when you get reminded of some of these events that were in the beginning of the year, you will go like, no, that was 4 years ago. That was 7 years ago. So a very heavy year. JT, please take us to the cold month of January 2024. Was it cold then? Partner. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's always cold in January, partner, at least where I am. And we can't deal with it with our power grid in Texas. Thank God I've moved. But let's begin with January 5th. This was a classic. This one lasted for a while. On January 5th, Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 suffered what fancy people call an uncontrolled decompression at 16,000 feet in the air. So in layman's terms, the daggum door blew off. So thankfully, no one was seriously hurt. There were a few small injuries. I think a couple of people went to the hospital just to get checked out.
The boy profit margin got very hurt. But
yeah, true. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. The event did cost, if I remember correctly, one dude his shirt and a teddy bear its life, unfortunately. But
a Hawaiian shirt. That's the important question.
I don't know. It was a white teenager, so quite possibly, or it could be Family Guy, or it could be a racial slur, or an anime shirt. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, that led to headlines like "I tried to suck a guy off and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." Jokes aside, this incident did spark an investigation, and it grounded all Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft in the U.S. The investigation is still ongoing. And it's been made more interesting and highly suspect after the convenient deaths of not one, but two whistleblowers, and there are a handful of others. One of them has come forward and like, man, there's some sus stuff going on in my life. I'm really kind of spooked. I made a video about that a while back. I think it got age restricted, so you may not have seen it pop up in your feed, so go check the channel for that one. And actually, there was another whistleblower that died, I think last month, not at Boeing, but at OpenAI. And the dude was like 26 years old, and he was planning on testifying against the company. So I'm not making any accusations here, but it is kind of alarming how many whistleblowers end up dead before they get to testify. Like, people who are going to testify probably aren't going to just randomly kill themselves, right? And it's one of those things where I think we all kind of know what's going on. Maybe it's not all of them going the way we think they're going, but it's a little too...
No, all these things happen only in the evil CCCP Soviet Cambodia, okay? This is where this was happening.
This doesn't happen in the freest country on earth.
Exactly right.
But yeah, that's still ongoing. Boeing is, last I heard, they're attempting to settle on some criminal fraud thing, pay a bunch of money to avoid an even longer court battle. But yeah, that's they've bonked two allegedly so far. Let's move on though. January 11th. This is one of my favorite events of the year. I mean, favorite's relative here. It's horrible, but it's good news.
It's your second favorite 11th after the 9.
Yes, exactly right. But we saw what I think will probably be made into a terrible chud bait movie in a few years. So after bickering with Federal Border Patrol for a few years, I think since like 2021, the Texas National Guard decided to take control of Shelby Park, which is a 47
classic.
Yeah, it was so stupid and kind of, in a way, eye-opening, but I'll get to that in a sec. But this is a 47-acre area in Eagle Pass, which is along the Rio Grande, which, if you don't know, that's what separates the U.S. and Mexico. It's a big old river, right? So, for a little background, the Texas state government is even more fascist than the federal government, and Governor Greg Abbott took it upon himself to seize the park via emergency declaration, citing the supposed migrant crisis. So the Texas National Guard closed the park, started blocking U.S. Border Patrol from patrolling the area. All right, so you replace one fascist goon squad with another. So what? There were a couple things that made this event notable. So first, while yes, Border Patrol is very bad, obviously, Greg Abbott and his cowboys are way worse. Like they are way worse. So after seizing the land, they started putting up razor wire, not just along the Texas side of the border on the land, but in the water. So,
of course. Just
to be clear, crossing the river is dangerous enough, but these freaks wanted to make sure people got sliced up, caught in wire, and drowned. That to me is like shocking on a human level. Like, fine, you don't want immigrants to come in. You think they're bad for reasons, whatever. Surely, like, human decency would be like, let's not put it in the water.
No, we just came back from, like, I don't know, 2 millennia ago when we were putting fucking sharks and alligators in between the castle where the wealthy lords and lordesses live and the peasant villages outside. And we've come absolutely full circle in the wealthiest country on the planet. It is beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's genuinely shocking. It's really gross. But, like, the second thing that this represented was the first time in living memory that we've seen a genuine standoff between state and federal military forces in the U.S. So on January 26th, I know that's what back then.
The movie.
God, that was so bad.
Oh God, fucking.
I could go on a little bit of a rant about
that. Was this year as well? God,
that was this year.
Yeah, it was summer this year. Yeah.
Oh, that was this summer? Man, I've lost track. But anyway.
It was a great cultural event where all Americans of all perspectives could come together.
I haven't seen a movie.
Oh, no, that was the assassination of the CEO where I'm confusing the two.
Ooh. Spicy. But, yeah, sure. So January 22nd, Supreme Court told the Texas National Guard to pound sand, right, and just let the Border Patrol back in. They're like, guys, cut it out. We know, yeehaw, cowboys, don't mess with Texas, all that stuff. But Greg Abbott was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, vowing to, quote, protect the sovereignty of the state. So soon after that, 25 Republican state senators, that is all of them, minus Vermont, I believe, pledged to support Texas and send their own National Guard troops if needed. Then on the 23rd, the DHS, Department of Homeland Safety, those are the people who visited me a couple of years ago, they gave the Texas Attorney General an ultimatum. Stand down, remove your razor wire. You've got until the 26th. So on the 25th, Texas Democratic representatives called for Biden to put the Texas National Guard under federal control, thereby committing the cardinal sin of messing with Texas, and the DHS's deadline passed on the 26th, and nothing happened. They didn't back it up with force. Texas won, likely setting a precedent that states can do whatever they want when push comes to shove. So since then, Texas has had to redirect funds from other state services to fund their fascist border policy, notably in the prison system, worsening conditions for inmates, which honestly Abbott probably sees as a win-win. He's like, oh, I get to kill migrants and kill prisoners by not providing, food. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So as U.S. conditions worsen, I would say probably expect to see more of these, constitutional crises between states and the federal government, as especially right-wing states realize that things aren't exactly, but especially Texas, Florida, the rest. They're going to be at odds with the federal government even when their guy is in charge, right? We're going to see that with Trump very shortly. But there were a lot of other things that happened in January, but I don't want this episode to go too long, so there's two for you.
I agree, and not to look at personal experiences as a Balkan boy, but as Yugoslavia slowly deteriorated because of many different foreign and domestic policies, these states, which were a part of a larger federation, started looking forward to separation more and more and more. And most likely, I don't think that JT is pushing the argument too far, but in the next probable half a century, there will be unironic state senators that are not only flirting with the idea of higher state independence or even separatism, balkanize, but some that might actually believe in such an ideological current as to preserve the wealth of our state as the rest are deteriorating further. We're not about to feed Wisconsin or something. We need, Texan money for Texans, etc., etc. And if you genuinely think that sort of rhetoric can only be thrown at immigrants and not at other types of Americans, then I don't know, have a bridge in San Francisco to sell you. But let's move to February. It's cold, not as much as January, but still freezing. And one man is dying in Siberia. On February 16th, the West's darling right-winger turned pro-European liberal Navalny ended up dying in one of Russia's hardcore penal colonies. While you will never see me praising Putin's domestic or foreign policies or the idea that, arresting political opposition is somehow very good, we shouldn't forget that Navalny was a perfect depiction of low-effort, U.S.-financed opposition candidates of what I like to call the 2020s. Haha, the new 20s are here. The Russian version, basically, of Juan Guaido, Milei, or the Falun Gong. Whether Navalny believed in what he fought for will be probably resolved by history. But his death, quite ironically in my opinion, has put an almost final nail in the coffin of any ideas of Russian opposition by hyper-focusing on a guy who was literally only popular outside of Russia. They allowed the state apparatus to galvanize support, and they picked all opposition, including even some socialists, still dedicated to different variations of the Soviet cause, as some sort of treasonous Western agents. TLDR, in their fervor to introduce an alternative to current Russian leadership, the West has given a gift to Putin and his party. All mainstream opposition will be basically compared to Navalny now, and therefore seen as illegitimate, pro-Western, treasonous, and installed by said West. They gambled hard on him, basically, missed really hard, and then abandoned the guy to his fate. And through that, arguably also almost everybody else that they might agree or disagree with when it comes to the opposition to Putin's party in the country. But that's politics, that's people, that's death. Enough about that. Let's talk about something that's actually important, and that is money.
Hey.
So NVIDIA, many of you might know it, many of you might not. The joke about 2024 is people learn what NVIDIA is. But time of writing, it might be the best place on the planet to work at least when it comes to how much money you will be grossing. They jumped to a $2 trillion evaluation back in February from $1 trillion in a matter of 8 months.
Wow.
To give you a better understanding of how massive that jump is, it took them 24 years to reach 1 trillion, not even a year to hit 2 trillion. This crazy monopoly money amount is underpinned by their ability to utilize the AI craze that's been hitting the markets for what feels like 20 years, but is around 2 years now. Most listeners probably think of gaming graphics cards when it comes to NVIDIA, but they've been pretty much pre-planning the introduction of AI as we define it, at least at this current time, for more than a decade before it came to fruition, which allowed them to mass produce hardware that's needed to run the mega processing plants that are, again, necessary for AI as we define it now to function. Basically, they invented, how do I put this, new oil for a new type of car. AI processing needs these chips like cars need engines to run, equals money. But yeah, we have companies waiting in line for months on end to get deliveries from NVIDIA, which is a pretty massive bottleneck due to the crazy demand and also instability in its Taiwanese production facilities. Hence, also not the main reason, but one of the many reasons why the U.S. is saber rattling and why they consider Taiwan to be so important to their economy, even though Taiwan is supposed to be an independent country. But that's a different conversation. So we got motherfuckers out here delivering chips in military convoys and armored cars. That's how valuable this shit has become. Many are trying to compete with NVIDIA, of course, at the moment. And as the decades progress, they might catch up or this whole bubble might burst. But until then, NVIDIA will continue to be king of the hill, sitting on a pile of gold. Chips. As of now, though, this was mind-blowing, at least to me, they're evaluated at 3 trillion. Yes.
Good Lord.
It went up to 3 trillion now in December 2024.
Wow.
So yeah, anybody working at NVIDIA listening to this, you have a fucking Patreon button downstairs. Okay, Patreon button downstairs. Do you so you don't feel
You're
that
welcome.
bad? Okay,
Also,
you're welcome. Free karma.
NVIDIA, help me out here. Also, I think they're releasing is it the 5090 that requires its own power plug, like its own. It's ridiculous. That's so funny, man. The new computer's going to be a hog. I tell you what, I'm going the 2 power cables coming out the back of your PC. Anyway, continue.
But they start a whole that's it for February. We can move to March, but maybe the one thing that should stick in people's brains from this, we tend to think that like the cloud is actually the fucking cloud, and I'm sure all the Zoomers listening to this are like whatever, but everybody that's arguably 30 plus might learn something. Like all of this processing that you're doing digitally actually needs to be done somewhere in hardware physically, which needs a lot of resources, both literal electricity that causes a particularly high amount of CO2 emission, but also resources like creation of said hardware that is capable of creating such mass output. The internet kind of, while being, we all basically live off of the internet, and I'm very grateful to it, and I love it, and I live on it at least 50% of my day. But we need to remember that it's not something separated from physical and material reality. There is direct impact. Every Google search or every ChatGPT entrance or even every hosting of a podcast such as this has to be stored somewhere and has to process a certain amount of energy for you to get it, or for us to create something that is stored on said server farm. So yeah, it's I just find it very funny when motherfuckers be like, "Hey, look at your fucking truck," and then I don't know, they run and they drive a Tesla, but they run like a fucking super AI startup out of Silicon Valley that fucking runs drones over Afghanistan and shit.
Honestly, like every time you ask ChatGPT to give you a recipe for muffins or something, you are personally strangling a sloth or perhaps an endangered salamander or like a small, cute little dik-dik, which is, I think, a deer in Africa. Yeah, they're really cute. So keep that in mind, Don't strangle them.
Absolutely.
Use your brain. You can write.
Come on. Exactly right. All right, moving on to March. There's a little bit more of a sprinkling of events to give the boys a little bit of diversity as well. Yes. First of all, we'll start with, I'll do like good news, bad news, good news, bad news.
That's realistically what you're here for. So
exactly right. I'll give you like a mix of good and bad news. We'll start with the good news first, and that is the story of Victor Manuel Rocha, or Rocha, who is a 73-year-old. He was an American intelligence officer and agent. Who was actually a double agent for Cuba since the 80s, and we stand our heroes, of course. He has been basically retired for many years, but let me just give you his story. This guy has worked for the Cuban government at least since 1981. That's as far as we know. He's been passing on to them notes and then all sorts of important intelligence information to thwart American efforts at basically doing all the horrible shit that they do to Cuba. And this is considered like the highest profile espionage case, or one of them at the very least. I want to quote you a few cute things. The evidence collected by investigators included covert recordings of Mr. Roja admitting to working for Cuba for decades, praising the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro as comandante and calling the United States the enemy. This guy is incredibly based, as we say. Not only this, but they specifically the CIA's former head of counterintelligence said about this guy and just generally Cuban counterintelligence or Cuban intelligence, he said, they owned us, they beat us. That's one of the reasons I have this personal grudge against the Cuban intelligence service, because they've been so successful in operating against us. So he's an absolute Sigma. My favorite thing, by the way, just listen to how much of an amazing dude this guy is. He would basically kind of find his way into every important position linked to Cuba in the American intelligence field. And then afterwards, after he retired, he got a lucrative role, or I guess you can call that, as a private consulting job for the U.S. Southern Command, specifically with the part that oversees connections with Cuba or their Cuban policy. This guy, man, what
Yamagussano, trust me, Yamagussano.
A beautiful.
My slaves, the Exactly why is he Italian? I don't know.
I love it. So we will salute our hero, who we hope will see the light of day from the evil clutches of the United States. That's number one. Number two, the bad story. This one is, I don't know if you remembered. Do you remember the drama of the U.S. pier to deliver aid into Gaza?
Oh,
yeah. That nonsense?
Yeah. The real short-lived pier?
Yeah. Exactly right. Well, that was a whole bunch of nonsense. It was a whole, as I used to say, hubbubalub. It is a whole bunch of nonsense because what the idea was that the United States, the Gazans need aid, but we can't get it in, even though we can tell our vassal states in Israel to just open up the borders. So they did all the song and theater and dance, right, to distract the world and pretend like they're doing something humanitarian by building a bullshit pier constructed through floating buoys and all that kind of stuff to kind of transport aid into. By the way, the amount of aid that can be transported was negligible for the actual necessities of the Gazan population. A single opening, like a border crossing in Gaza, could deliver everything that they could possibly need. This didn't even deliver a fraction of it. It collapsed immediately upon building it. The United States spent like $200 million or something, a ridiculous amount of government money trying to build it just for the theater. It immediately got swept away. The 2 days or whatever that was functional, it was used to drop in a little bit of aid and then like ammunition and resources for the Israeli military into Gaza. Very fucked up. And then afterwards it was dismantled and taken away and nobody ever heard of it again. And this was all American taxpayer money to do this shit instead of, I don't know, like just telling Israel to open up the borders. Or, just telling them, you know what, here's an embargo. Well, you're not gonna, of course they would never do that because the United States stands to profit very handsomely from the weapon sales to Israel. So of course they wouldn't do that. But
it was domestic PR. It was like, look, we're doing something for the suffering civilians, but not really doing anything.
These poor savages.
Let's go take a few photos and shit. It's a classic.
Exactly right. So that's one of the disgusting things that had happened and then just completely stopped. Let's move on to some nice news. And that is that the deforestation rate of Brazil's Amazon had fallen by nearly 50% in 2023. Awesome. That is in contrast to the rainforest destruction rate, which surged to a 12-year high under Bolsonaro. Of course it did. But under Lula, it's been a bit better. Not as good as it needs to be, but still better.
Something.
Yeah, exactly right. To remind people generally, it's 60% of the Amazon is located in Brazil, and this is one of our like major resources for counteracting climate change.
Carbon sinks.
Yeah, exactly right. And to cut it in half is not good enough, but it's at least something. So that's nice to hear. And then finally, the third thing, which is, I guess, good news as well. Bad news for American domestic producers and other ones. We'll talk about it. Xiaomi, the people who make the phones, right? They made an electric car, their SU7 model, which sells for, it's basically the same specs, roughly same specs and quality and whatnot of the Porsche Taycan, which is a very high-end vehicle, high-end electric vehicle, but it produces and sells for $30,000 would be.
$30,000.
$30,000, exactly right. And this is
the Taycan's $200,000.
Exactly right. Yeah. That's the thing, and that's why. And that's why if you look at markets all around the world, they're slapped with ridiculous tariffs because this is basically a sports car with all the features and all the bells and whistles that people like. with a 700-kilometer range and shit like that. Ridiculously good specs for it.
For the fucking price, it's
for
absolutely
the price,
insane.
yeah, exactly.
You're
right,
not gonna get a Porsche, but you're
Yeah.
gonna get like 80% of the Porsche
Yeah.
at literally like 20% of the
Exactly
price.
right. And
which
the car is gorgeous if you look at it. I'm not a car guy, but it's a beautiful.
It's a
vehicle.
phone in a car.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
In the first 27 minutes of sales, there were 50,000 orders of the vehicle, which is unsurprising. This is also, by the way, Xiaomi is technically a state-owned company. They have like one of their units at the very least is the BAIC group, which is a state-owned car manufacturer, and it works with Xiaomi in this case to produce these vehicles. They say that they can produce up to 200,000 cars a year, which is insane to think about. I've looked at some of the the reviews of Car Bros, and generally very glowing reviews for a first entry market vehicle. Xiaomi does not make cars. This is like for them entering the market, this is a hard hitter. And of course, the entire Western production sphere has collapsed in fear because of this. Essentially, to quote. The European Union has launched an investigation into whether Chinese government subsidies have helped the country's electric car makers undercut European-made models. That's what subsidies are supposed to do. They're supposed to increase the productivity of your own industry. This is not Chinese overcapacity at production. This is just smart investment. Any government can do this, right? But anyways, in the United States, the same thing with the tariffs and whatnot. And this will only continue, by the way. So
that's the irony. Developing your domestic economy as a country that is not part of the defined, Western IMF world is de facto aggressive. It's like against us for you to develop your economy.
Exactly right. So that's very nice to see. And I look forward to basically the entire rest of the world driving very nice, modern electric cars. Meanwhile, the United States are going to be stuck, Americans are going to be stuck with their Ford Raptors or whatever the fuck they're called. The ones that kill children.
That doesn't narrow it down.
Apparently, there's an electric version of them now. Or
so there's an
electric
Hummer
version of everything now.
Electric Hummer.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's an F-150. I don't know what do they call it? E-150? I forget. No, F-150 Lightning. That's what they call it.
How do they square that circle? I thought you were a big burly man with the diesel engine and all that shit. How do they kind of?
I don't know yet. I think the jury's still out on how sales are going to do.
Okay. Well, listen. Well, that was March.
Lovely. Thank you. So let me move on to April here. April was a little dry in the U.S. at least, except for probably one of the most notable events of the year, I would say, which is actually a series of events that kicked off in April with the creation of a pro-Palestine occupation protest by students at Columbia University. So just like we saw with the Vietnam War protests of the 60s, the state chose violence instead of listening to the just and reasonable demands of the students. So for the crime of organizing against genocide, hundreds of students, faculty, and other protesters were assaulted and arrested by the NYPD, which had been sicked on them by the university's own president. And the students did a really great job, I think, bringing attention to Columbia's complicity in the Israeli genocide of Palestine, as well as the broader U.S. support for the apartheid regime and its crimes. So what they did, if somehow you've been living under a rock, they established an encampment of tents on the quad. They had really well-spoken representatives to deal with the corporate media, who would, usually they find the dumbest kid they can find and say, okay, hey, say what this is about, and they put their foot in their mouth. But no, they had really well-trained journalism students rejecting the premise that was offered to them by the corporate media and correcting it, which was so nice to see for once. And they stood up to the police by rebuilding the encampment twice. So their integrity and bravery sparked similar protests across the country.
And the police was actually beating the living fucking shit out of them.
Yeah, it was
just
violent.
Standing around and stopping their movement. It was
no. I mean, they used what are considered chemical weapons, like tear gas and stuff like this, things that are banned in war. They're like, let's use them on students who are saying, hey, please don't use our money for genocide. And so no, we're gonna throw you down the stairs. We're gonna shoot you with less than lethal rounds. We're gonna cuff you and break your arms. It was really brutal stuff from the NYPD, and that's what they're known for. But at least it did spark similar protests across the country, which is great for raising awareness among people who only watch the mainstream news. Even if you watch this on the news, you're like, wow, even the most sheltered wine mom would be like, hey, that's that my daughter's that age. What if she was there? They're hurting those kids. That's good. That's really, really good to see. Same kind of thing happened with Vietnam War. Student protests are very, very useful in that capacity there. But unsurprisingly, U.S. leadership failed to listen, and instead they doubled down on funding the genocide and slandering the good and decent American people standing against these crimes as, say with me, y'all, they were anti-Semitic.
Classic.
Yeah. And that's such a trump card to pull. Like, it's... Obviously, it's bullshit, and I think more and more people are realizing it's bullshit. It's like, no, these people they're asking for a return to a pluralistic society that respects all faiths, which Palestine was before, the Zionist occupation. That is not anti-Semitic to say, hey, stop murdering people, stop bombing indiscriminately, right? And that's when that's all you have, when your only defense is, anti-Semitism, or the liberals just pull the identity politics thing, hard to combat. But
and they show just how much intrinsic power they have.
Yeah.
Israel specifically inside of the United States through AIPAC and so on. That most people at this point, unless those that very actively want to continue being ignorant, have realized, and that's to a very large extent thanks to those protesters, thanks to the fact that they didn't stop even after they threw tear gas at them, even after they beat the shit out of them, even after quite literal billionaires were putting them on non-employment lists, et cetera, et cetera.
And slapping their face on trucks, driving it around campus, saying, this is the anti-Semite of the week. Just intimidation, cruelty.
And also, what's it called? Is it called libel in English? Like when you...
When you slander someone, basically.
Exactly. They're slandering people with this bullshit. And nobody does a thing.
They were getting professors kicked out of universities, deans getting kicked out of universities, people losing their jobs, people losing all sorts of career opportunities. If there was, let's imagine if there was if 5% of the United States knew just how impactful foreign Israeli policy is on domestic and foreign American policy, if 5% knew before the genocide in Palestine started and before these protests started, I would argue that at least 40 to 50% of all American citizens know now. And if there is any sort of manner through which we can calculate how successful a protest is, this to me is a massive green flag that the kids did a really good fucking job.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
Did. They really did. And it also shows, it's revealed very clearly, even in institutions of higher learning, they're supposed to be, that's where you go to broaden your horizons. It's like, no, you must toe the imperial line or you will be fired and beaten. Like that's pretty revealing, and that's very useful. If it's not terribly useful now, it is for people in the hyper online circle that see these things and they learn and they can adjust their perspectives. Maybe not for boomers and the Gen X people who just watch CNN and stuff, but give it 10, 15 years, once the dust has settled, similar to what we saw with South Africa, apartheid South Africa, suddenly you'll have this wealth of historical footage and interviews and all of this stuff where people can reckon with what's going on right now and have a lot of good data to show just how evil this period was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot more shots of these people being unhinged fucking pro-apartheid animals. So they won't be able to do what a lot did after apartheid fell apart in South Africa, which is, we always supported Mandela. The fuck are you talking about? He's my guy. Martin Luther King, love him. Favorite type of tomato.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, generally. Always reminds me of I saw an interview many years ago. It was interviews during the civil rights period in the early 60s of white Americans. And they were talking to white liberals, people who self-identified as progressive liberals. And they're like, what do you think about the civil rights movement? It's like, I think there's some good parts of it, but there are also some violence. I think the civil rights movement is moving along too quickly. I think we need to really put the brake. Ideas like this, which is like, yeah, exactly right. Liberals, fuck. It's a disgusting thing to see, but then afterwards, of course, 10 years later, they can be like, no, I was there and marching with the thing, right? They're gonna spin the tail. I was gonna say just a little interjection. throughout this entire year, the one constant is the Gaza ceasefire. Oh, the Hamas-run health ministry says, like these kind of headlines. Headlines like, "Who will call me dad? Tears of Gaza father who lost 103 relatives."
Yeah.
And this is, by the way, side by side. This was a direct quote, by the way. But this is side by side with sanitized headlines that basically say like, "Oh, Israel bombed all its neighbors again each month." And next to it is going to be like 102 people killed following Israeli airstrikes. But it's going to be the most sanitized, removing active and passive voice, all this kind of stuff. But the one constant is this. It's this talk about Gaza, specifically ceasefire talk that goes nowhere, and the immense human suffering that's happening. And every other kind of suffering, animal, plant, everything. Colonialism, and specifically settler colonialism, is a form of fascism that is foreign and rejected by the very land itself. That's why they have to kind of domineer over it and bring pines from Northern Europe into Palestine and watch them burn every summer cycle. But all right.
While uprooting the native olive trees and poisoning the water.
Yeah.
The metaphor doesn't get thicker.
Yeah.
But speaking of thick, snow goes away and spring comes with May. But this year's been long. And to remind you for the 500th time just how long it was, back in May, the leader of the Iranian state died in a fucking helicopter crash. I was shocked that this was this year, honestly. Along with the country's foreign minister, marking either the wildest timing for a random event that is relevant to international, to the biggest events in international politics in history, or a wider conspiracy. The crash, attributed to a technical failure, occurred in northwestern Iran. This, as we now know, would at one point be followed by the Hezbollah pager bombings and the death of the leader of Hezbollah. So I guess now I ask you boys, complete tinfoil hat moment. Do you really think the helicopter just fell out the fucking air? If so, why the fuck would you, respectfully to the Iranian leadership, but why the fuck would you use the most dangerous travel method available to us right now, the fucking helicopter, to transport a head of state all the time? Guy flew with it all the time? Or is there a wider conspiracy to be considered here? What do you think?
Nah, I think it was actually what they say, and it was a technical, issue with the helicopter and whatnot. First of all, it was old equipment, but much more importantly,
yeah, but that's even more. Why the fuck?
Yeah. I know.
What the fuck?
I know, but you need to realize that Iran is a highly mountainous country. So if you want to get to certain parts of the country, it's either we take a 40-minute helicopter ride, or a 6-hour, train, a plane, train, car, and then God knows what the fuck else, transport. It's like when you have to get to different parts of China, right? When Xi Jinping needs to visit these different areas, and he mentions that he's
travel 100 hours by train before I set foot in a helicopter for a 10-minute flight. I won't do it.
I'm with you. But we're also not heads of state. We don't know the pressing issues.
Exactly. So I would additionally not get into a chopper. But yes, you have so much work. You have to get to places. But there's also Zoom calls. I don't know. I don't know. It's to continuously put such an important person into something that
that's held together with
so
one pin at the top
is wild. It's just fucking wild to me. I don't know. It's an L. I don't know. But yes, moving on. Talking about L's, but L's that didn't really result in much. Donald Trump found guilty on hush money charges. Back when we didn't know Trump was going to become president, again, we witnessed him becoming an official criminal. And while, yes, I hear you all screaming, herder, all American presidents are war criminals, we have a whole ass series titled exactly like that, it's still extra edgy to see his own justice system pronounce him guilty and for him to still go on to win the presidential elections. It tells you a lot about society or some shit. I don't fucking know. But he is now officially the first former U.S. president who became became a president again, convicted of a crime with a Manhattan jury finding him guilty on 34, I repeat, 34 felony counts of falsifying records to hide hush money payments to Stormy Daniels during his 2016 presidential campaign. So we have the first U.S. president currently in office who is an official criminal in the eyes of the U.S. legal system, and it's about hush money relevant to fucking. That writes itself, and I'm so fucking here for it. Okay.
Oh, it helped him. It helped him so much. You know, that's made so, like, walking around my neighborhood in the run up to the election, a lot of yard signs that said, you know, felon 2024. It's like people are proud of that. They love it. The Trump people love that. That and the bloody patriotic ear picture, which we'll get to in a bit.
Fantastic.
Moving on to June, we have a couple of interesting events also in June. Nearing nuclear war, destabilizing.
Just as you usually do, you know.
Destabilizing the, what's it called? Destabilizing European politics. Well, we'll get there. The first one was in the end of May to beginning of June. The Western Bloc kind of collectively allowed Ukraine to start hitting Russian soil with Western weapons, which is basically flirting with nuclear war, essentially. And they're like, you know, for those people who are convinced of let's say hypothetically that Ukraine should be doing this, they shouldn't, but let's say hypothetically they should be doing this. The entire Western blocs don't produce, between them, they don't produce enough of these weapons, these long-range weapons, missiles of all types, etc., to fill their own need, right? Their own depots they can't fill. So they can only give what they can spare, which means that they can give 5 missiles, 10 missiles, 12 missiles, 15 missiles at a time, right? Across month-long shipments, right? That means that at most they can use these on a dozen targets maybe within Russia. Have you seen Russia? Russia is the size of Pluto. Right? In landmass. Okay. There is
I've never heard it compared like that.
There's a fuck ton of Russia. All right. So at most, all you would be doing is pissing off Russia. That's all you'd be doing. There's no strategic use of these missiles. This is only solely a provocation. Unless the West can all of a sudden start providing Ukraine with thousands, more accurately tens of thousands of missiles, then this is a completely pointless exercise in basically showing that the West is kind of directly trying to, NATO bloc at least, is directly trying to provoke Russia. This is incredibly stupid. The Russians have said as much, and their European and Ukraine's European allies, or excuse me, Ukraine is basically a military dictatorship that's a vassal of American foreign policy, and the other vassals of the United States that exist in Europe are just basically feeding ruining their economies in order to feed this war that's clearly nearing its end, not in the Ukrainians' favor. This is just used to kind of fight Russia until the last Ukrainian. And it's not going anywhere. And of course, this month was also the whole month of talking about the F-16s, which, by the way, have practically all been shot down at this rate. It was a whole big fucking thing that they made about it. But this is also a provocation because F-16s can be loaded with nuclear warheads. Their missiles can be loaded with nuclear warheads. Regardless, the provocations have continued, the war has continued, and my favorite thing about it is when you read things like the BBC, it's replete with language like Ukraine has a right to defend itself, but this is never extended to Palestine, so again it shows the double standard, etc., which is ridiculous. They're very clear in this thing, it's like, oh, there's annexed Ukrainian land by the Russians, the violation of sovereignty, no such talk about Palestine, which is refreshing, I'll say. Moving on to the good news. There was the Niger coup, which is very nice to hear. Exactly right. Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown by essentially the Nigerian military, and they set up a interim government, let's say, with many of their policies kind of aligning with all the other new coup governments, like in Burkina Faso, for example, with Ibrahim Traore, where or Traore, I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, where they kind of center on anti-French politics, which is incredibly based, keeping the French out. And number two, nationalizing industry, or kind of taking control of their own mines, reworking different agreements, so on and so forth. Niger is a bit harder to get information on, but the biggest thing is the uranium and other mining activities. Something like 60% or even more of France's nuclear power generation relies on very cheap Nigerian inputs, including uranium and other commodities. And this is basically this was used to subsidize the electricity needs and the living standards of France. A colonial relationship, essentially. And Niger basically is discussing this, let's say, in the nicest way with France, which is lovely to see. It's the same thing with all the other coup governments. Moving on. As this is happening, the French far-right Le Pen party, which is basically the French Nazi party is what they are.
Yeah.
If you listen to the things that their supporters say, if you look at the history of the party, it was, again, like all these other far-right European parties, originally a Nazi party. If you look at their original, clauses and party programs and whatnot, you realize that this is a fascist party. But anyways, this was the point in the year when they were really pulling far ahead into winning the elections. And then it turned out that the French people actually went out and voted and made their voice at least a little bit heard. And then what happened actually was the largest contingency that came out was the far left, essentially, in a coalition of parties. And then it was kind of, yeah, exactly. Then it was the far right, and then it was the weakest, the center liberal cringe that doesn't, flip floppy, have no positions.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the French government has turned around and betrayed the political will of their population because they clearly stood behind the far left coalition. But like, no, we're gonna pick a liberal. Some guy who just because the past 3 liberals that we picked, they have ruined France. I mean, maybe maybe they should be commended for ruining France.
Okay. I was like, what's Hakeem gonna say?
Exactly right. But anyways, so this is the beauty of the French far right. They keep surging ahead despite the fact that they have no real policy. It's a lot of very vague, like, we are for green energy, but we'll also use fossil fuels, and we want to deport all these people, but also economic growth. We're all for that. How are they going to do that when they start deporting the most employable and the youngest portions of their working age and labor age populations? They don't explain, amongst other things.
It's right-wing parties everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as Trump. It's like, I'm against high grocery bills. I'm against immigration. And he gets in, he's like, there's nothing I can do about grocery bills. Like, you just say stuff that sounds good to your bigoted, terrified base, and you win.
I'm against sleeping in the dark because it's spooky, and I'm for candy before bedtime. Like, and then people are like, woo! Fuck yeah, exactly. Start plugging. And then the last one, of course, which is just an interesting little historical tidbit. Cyril Ramaphosa had been reelected the president of South Africa at the time, and this is interesting because the African National Congress, which has been kind of like the ruling party in South Africa, had lost its edge or lost its controlling share of South African politics for a bit at this point. So his reelection kind of shows a reinvigoration of the trust in the African National Congress. Which is both kind of like decent and a shame. Is decent because it kind of keeps away the far right forces in South Africa, but also it's a shame because they've kind of turned into a neoliberal party and have been for quite a while. There are the economic freedom fighters, which are far left, and they're the ones who sung "Kill the Boer," absolutely based. Exactly right. We can't forget that absolute banger. Yeah. But they are also a significant force in South African politics. So we'll see exactly how it turns. But this was an interesting kind of return of status quo for South Africa, which is interesting because it means that business continues as usual, meaning the lives of South Africans don't really improve that much, but the general political stability is at least kind of maintained. It's a tough balancing act for such a large and diverse country. Yes, that was the month of June.
Man, can you believe it? We're halfway through the year already, an hour into the show. A long one for you people today. July had some banger events, and here I'm talking strictly about generating slop for the content trough, not commenting on whether any of these events were good. So first, obviously, there was the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump at a campaign event in Pennsylvania. The Democrats were cooked as soon as that photo of Trump with the bloody ear was published. They're garbage. They were cooked before that, but this event, turning Trump into some brave, patriotic hero, obviously didn't help. I've seen a lot of those posters, a lot of those shirts. I don't know if I told you guys, I went to some old people across the street do a party every few months. And apparently we missed the memo about the dress code because like a third of them had shirts that just said "You missed, bitch" on it. I was like, oh god,
yeah, brother, yeah, I fucking love it when you miss, brother, yeah, brother.
Yeah, so I feel very welcome here. Feel very included.
6 months later, we didn't miss, motherfucker.
Yeah. But anyway, the shooter, whom everyone immediately started dunking on X, the everything platform, ended up missing Trump and killed somebody in the crowd behind him before being shot by Secret Service snipers who were like having a tea party or something on their shed that they were posted up on. So just like, I mean, the guy, kind of unfortunate looking. I mean, everyone's beautiful in their own way, but he was kind of a dweeb. So imagine being enshrined in history as the personification of the soy Wojak, juxtaposed with Luigi Mangione as the Chad Wojak. I mean, like, what a legacy! This poor kid. This poor kid.
Yeah. Our guy versus your guy. Hey, yeah. Weakest class culture soldier versus strongest. I don't know why I'm even doing this.
RFK fan. Yeah, I don't even know what he was doing. But then a few days later, we had the very cool and normal Republican National Convention. It's great every time.
It was incredible.
I don't recommend watching any clips from it, but if you've had a few drinks, go for it. It's wild. But this is where Trump picked Jorkin DePenis Vance as his running mate.
We're chalking it.
This is the guy who wrote Hillbilly Elegy, which was turned into a terrible movie. Doesn't have much in the way of credentials. Not that it really matters, but he's a dweeb, terrible guy. And then a few days after that, Biden announces he has COVID and goes into hiding. Now, looking back, it's quite possible that this was actually either due to his failing health, which it's now been revealed was way worse than they claimed. I don't know if you guys have seen that article or that expose about, like, this guy was dying. And everyone's like, yeah, obviously, you're injecting him with horse tranquilizers or whatever to keep him alive. But then it could also have been locked door meetings, with top Democrats demanding he drop out, because I think like a week after that, Biden announces his withdrawal from the race, saying he will not seek re-election. Then he officially casts his lot with Kamala Harris, who very democratically becomes the presumptive nominee the next day. So no discussion allowed. She's just handed the crown to the Democratic nomination. And we all know how that turned out. So all in all, a very spicy month for the U.S. and excellent slop. Very good slop for the content trough in July.
That was absolutely a phenomenal month. And since you mentioned the couch fucker, we move on to August. And it begins with the guy who looked like he fucks but doesn't really fuck, and that is the Waltz nomination. So many were all like, holy shit, bro, it's like Bernie Sanders from Timu, bro, or at least we, like shit like, at least we got something, we got something. This guy is a cool uncle, and he likes unions and shit, hates racists, and does silly little videos with his daughter. That whole thing lasted like 25 fucking seconds until he went full on drone strike Palestinian babies on, pretty much leading to everyone changing the channel, right? I don't know. Maybe this man could have contributed a lot to the Harris campaign if he was an actual progressive, but it's hard to give that pitch to socialists or Bernie bros, because no matter how based you are in this or that department, if you are a fucking kitty killer, there ain't nobody left wing who's gonna stay and listen. But it was a nice like 20 seconds of like, it's we'll take what we get. Okay, this is kind of okay.
A scrap at last.
A scrap. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And then she looked us straight in the eyes and she said, "I'm speaking. I am speaking. Shut up." Well, you're not speaking anymore. I recently saw like she gave some speech for Forbes or whatever, Kamala, I mean, and. The video has 7,000 views. It was posted 3 days ago. It's absolutely phenomenal. Nobody cares. Like, she's immediately forgotten. Forgotten. And continuing with August, a very, very electoral month, right? Kind of the final gift of the month, because it was towards the end of the month. RFK our beautiful boy dropped out, or better said, RFK's brainworm told him to drop the fuck out. He gave us great moments, okay, and earned a high-ranking position in the current Trump government, becoming the first, Americans should be proud, the first non-human to serve in the executive body of the U.S. government.
As the czar of treats.
Absolutely. Mr. Worm, pilot us well. We salute you. But also, since I'm mentioning piloting, some of you might remember this, some of you might not remember this. I genuinely thought it was in a different year. A very fun story. We had, as you all know, multiple CEO sacrifices this year, not just the one hand delivered to us by the brave Italian-American hero Luigi, but back in August, we had the sea relapsing when it comes to its hunger for billionaires. Back in 2023, we had the submarine implosion, if you remember. This year, it was a whole-ass massive yacht that went under, and a bunch of rich people died, including a British tech entrepreneur Mike Lynch, once dubbed Britain's Bill Gates, and Morgan Stanley's chairman, Jonathan Bloomer, amongst 6 other people. Thankfully, thank God, no staff died. So if you're cringing listening to me say this in cold blood, maybe you should know that the boat flipped as they were celebrating a $8 billion fraud acquittal. $8 billion fraud acquittal. $8 billion fraud acquittal. Yeah,
Insane.
even Neptune, I guess, fucking has his limits.
Yeah. How did it flip? Was it an orca? Please say it was an orca.
No, it was the god of the seas. That was like, what the fuck you doing up there?
No, he just generally just...
Yeah, the sea hungers for CEOs. But you know, every month a sacrifice must be delivered.
But Comrade Orca been doing some work too. I forget, what year was that they chomped a bunch of bad boats. I forget what the bad boats were, but the orcas were doing good work.
You are a bad boat.
Yeah,
whenever he talks about boats, I immediately start thinking about Trump back, I think it was like 2018. My beautiful boaters, they have come in such numbers.
Yeah, the armada that sunk, yeah.
My beautiful boaters.
That was so funny.
Oh, sick. But yeah. My birthday month was pretty sick. August was pretty nice.
Moving on to the beautiful month of September, let's start off with a banger. We were very interested in Argentina's Milei and his policies. Well, the poverty rate in Argentina has risen very sharply, and now more than half of the Argentinian population is living in poverty. It is at 52.9%, up from 41.7% in the second half of 2023. And that is because since taking office in December, Milei has cut subsidies for transport, for fuel, for energy. He's fired many thousands of civil servants. He's reduced government expenditure in hopes of bringing down inflation. And despite this, it has one of the highest rates in the world with more than 230%. And he has claimed that all of this is a success and everything he's done is very, very good for the government and for Argentina. And he's too busy jerking off to Elon Musk to actually do anything reasonable for the government. So there you go. That's what anarcho-capitalist policies get you, I guess. When you get a guy who used to fucking dress up as Captain ANCAP or whatever, fucking cosplay
so
with his cringe, like, New Republic French mutton chops. Is that what they're fucking called? Disgusting. But yeah.
The dude's weird. Dude's real weird.
So that's number one, failure of one far-right government. Now let's move on to another far-right government, which has currently, or in the month of September, reached a new high in their, I guess, popularity, which is the Freedom Party in Austria, which is a far-right, essentially Nazi party. Again, where they won 28.9% of the vote, which is ahead of the People's Party, which is the standard conservative ruling party, which has 26.3% of the vote, which, how it generally goes with these kind of governments is when they see the far right kind of rise, the kind of like less far right, but still far right governments are like, we need to catch up here. So we're talking about like a nearly 60%, or more actually, control of Austrian politics, which are heavily based in basically the same contradictory policies I mentioned before. Not liking immigrants, despite the fact that they're possibly the largest subsection or largest growing subsection of your labor population, meaning your economy will collapse if you get rid of these people, number one. Number two, the vast majority of these people are fully assimilated, speak German, or live, right? They might have a different religion or certain cultural traditions, but for all intents and purposes, they live within this Austrian civil society and so on and so forth. This election was noted for being a high turnout election with 77% of the vote, which is better than the United States, but still 77% is fucking dog shit. That's not a what's it called?
Damn, I'm over here thinking, wow, that's really good.
No, that's not good. These are figures that show there's a fundamental distrust of the government. If 3 out of 4 people, which is roughly what's happening here, go out to vote, that means the fourth person is so distrustful or so uninterested in the current goings on. And when you extrapolate this over tens of thousands, hundreds, or millions of people, you realize that so many people's voices are not heard, or they feel that they would not be able to affect the system. They've not gained anything from it despite all this. And this is the gray area where these far right parties really do win out. Because if these people were to go and vote, most likely they would not vote for these parties. But I mean, the parliamentary democracy is intended for the squabbling over mostly either identities, social issues, or impotent economic ideas, right? To fight it out. It's not made to actually improve the what's it called, living standards of the people. It's still kind of difficult to see where this goes. But just so you know, the Freedom Party was founded itself by Nazis in the 50s. 2 days before the election, candidates for the party were on video at some funeral where they're singing an SS song. So there you go.
Not a great look. It's not good.
Exactly right. And then, of course, they're like, oh, no, but this is actually a song that predates the
heritage, not hate.
Nazi. Yeah, exactly right. It's the same, They all have the same playbook. We'll see what ends up happening with this. The next thing that happened was the death of Alberto Fujimori, who was the Peruvian, essentially, dictator. I love how, by the way, when in all the Western press, he was like, they tried to kind of brush over this by being like, oh, the strong man, the former leader of Peru. They never specify. Yeah, exactly right. They literally say, by the way, the controversial former Peruvian president. That's what it says on the PBC. He died at the age of 86. This was a guy who was known for rampant human rights abuses, disappearing shit. Of political prisoners, the severe rise of income inequality and poverty within Peru, discrimination against the indigenous population of Peru, so on and so forth. Absolutely, disgusting human being who has died now, alhamdulillah. Maybe we need to make a specific, dedicated episode to him eventually. But essentially, what you need to know is what Milei is now. Fujimori was in the period that he ruled for 40 years ago now, or 30 years ago now. But back then there was no internet, so you can't just kind of right. Like if Milei could censor enough, he would be carrying out mass executions. But he knows he can't get away with it. So this is the kind of people we're dealing with. Moving on to some base news. The government of Venezuela had foiled yet another coup plot. American-based, what's it called? American-sponsored, CIA-sponsored coup plot, which the United States, of course, went out and said, no, absolutely not, we would never do this. But they captured the people and their passports and their documents and whatnot. And this is maybe, I think, since 2020, this is maybe the third or fourth attempt, which is kind of fucked up at this point.
It fell off, bro.
Yeah, honestly. But so I
just put out a video about Venezuela actually, and the New York Times featuring our boy Alan McLeod of
Let's go.
It's very good. I watched it. It's good. Watching the stream, it's actually very, very good.
Hey, appreciate it. The commenters were like, we don't do that. No, stupid.
Well, what can you do? They general capture of the agents was followed by finding depots of weapons and all this, like typical American coup stuff, right? If they would have gone any further, then there would have been snipers on roofs killing civilians, and then the same fucking playbook as well. But regardless, this was yet another coup attempt foiled. But that was one thing that happened. And then finally, we spoke about the baby Nazis. Let's talk about the big Nazis, which is the far-right Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD party, which also had seen many gains, I guess you could call it, in the election cycle of Germany. And this is not surprising, of course. They've been trending on a whole host of anti-immigrant talk, and they're kind of building up their power base based on the vassalage of Germany to American interests, right? The German economy has been gutted by the destruction of Nord Stream, the increasing electricity prices, which have made German manufacture to be unproductive generally because electricity prices have went up, meaning production prices have went up, which means prices generally have went up, which means not only export is more difficult, so export revenues have reduced, but also inflation has increased as a result. This is just a generally worsening economic situation that they're kind of capitalizing on, which is a shame to see, but this is a direct result of the, failed adventure in Ukraine that the Americans are pushing, and also the destruction and implosion of all these European economies, periphery or vassalized European economies, and they're basically just choosing to use this to fuel their growth. The federal elections are gonna happen in 2025, so we don't know exactly what's gonna happen with their growth, but they're polling better in any case, which is a scary thought.
Yeah, now they got a fanboy in Musk now,
of course,
retweeting their stuff and saying, "Oh, they're so cool." Well, October. Let's move on, shall we? October was a comparatively quiet month on the U.S. front, with just a few small items worth noting, in my opinion. Jimmy Carter turned 100 years old, and boy, does he look every day of that. They rolled him out. I was like, wow, he looks bad. Like, he looked bad a couple years ago, but still like a living human being. But yeah, I mean, the poor guy, like, just leave him in peace. Don't wheel him out to these things at this point. Then you had Just Dance Vance and Democratic VP pick Tim Walz. They had a debate in New York, which was by all accounts very boring. But the most important story of the month, at least in the U.S., was the dock workers' strike. So workers at 36 ports across the country conducted a 3-day strike action demanding better pay, citing concerns with automation, stuff like that. This was one of the largest strikes in recent memory, including over 47,000 dock workers, which is a critical industry there. The strike blocked about half the U.S.'s imports and 2/3 of their exports via container, and that worked out to a loss of about $5 billion per day, which made the strike one of the most costly in the country's history. So with that much money on the line, not surprising that the U.S. Maritime Alliance caved so quickly. It was just a 3-day thing. The unions involved, the ILA and ILWU, won their members a tentative contract that includes a significant 60% raise over the next 6 years. That's a big deal. It should show people, especially those working in these key industries, that striking gets the goods. Now, if we could just get militant labor to coordinate a strike across multiple sectors, then we'd really be cooking, right? It doesn't take much to bring a complex economy like the United States to a standstill. Like, if the dock workers could get what they wanted in 3 days, imagine dock workers, truckers, food service, healthcare, GG. That's and the thing about that is that's one of the very few ways to get the ruling class to play ball. Like, Luigi, think what you will about Luigi, that's one way to get their attention. The other way, the way that is less likely to get you put in court on terrorism charges, is to unionize and coordinate a strike. So, but that was a big one for October. That was really cool to see.
And that's exactly what happened in November in South Korea, actually, because they managed to react extremely quickly, and because they had they had organized properly on the ground, and because unions in South Korea managed to coordinate in a matter of like 4 or 5 hours, I believe, after, for those of you who are not informed, the South Korean president basically said, dude, I'm doing martial law, I'm going to go to war with North Korea, fucking YOLO this shit. And also on top of that, he was just like, fucking, people are saying listening to his wife, but that's a different conversation. The mildest South Korean drama, but IRL, and turning from a drama to potential war movie. But yeah, because they managed to coordinate so well in like a matter of 4 to 5 hours, pretty much every single union said, we are going on general strike, go fuck yourself. Like the country is going to come to a standstill. And in my opinion, that was the biggest punch to the potential coup attempt, even bigger than, the whole parliament saying, fuck you to your coup attempt, half of the army to an extent doing it as well. It was exactly organized and relatively militant labor which managed to stop a complete overturn of the South Korean system. But the big overturn that we did see in November that everybody probably remembers is that it was election season, and everyone was, who will it be, woman Hitler or orange Hitler? And in a surprising turn of events, orange Hitler takes the race. He calls forth his Avengers, the Worm Man RFK, the Emerald Mine sperm donor, and only man built weirder than the president himself, Elon, the WWE lady, and a bunch of other people whose American name I cannot be bothered to remember. This is the beginning of a new era for America. Freedom is back, baby. Time to deport people and cut taxes. Ye motherfucking ha. But yeah, Trump won. It's pretty recent. I'm sure you remember. But
I'll go on record here saying, everybody, we called it. We were right the whole time. Everybody's like, oh, Kamala's got it. And we're like, no. Deprogram stance, Trump has this in the bag. From the very beginning, we said Trump has this in the bag, and we were right. We're vindicated.
Absolutely.
We're very smart.
Big win for the Deprogram. Big win. But, the fact that Trump won doesn't mean that he goes into power immediately, and Biden is president up until, power changes hands. So jealous of not even having been a part of the election cycle, Biden suffered from multiple regressive mental disorders. One morning in November, he woke up thinking the Cold War was still on and that the Soviet Union still existed. When briefed by his staff of an ongoing fight between the Ukrainians and the Russians, he was super confused, but he was like, okay, I will seize the opportunity to finally take down the Soviet government. He shouted at his foreign policy secretary saying, let's get that fucker Brezhnev right now. He won't see this coming. Give our long-range missiles to the Ukrainian freedom battalions and tell them they have a green light to bomb inner Russian territories, as they did. The doomsday clock inched even closer to midnight. But yeah, afraid of potential sabotage of the U.S.'s support to Ukraine in its war against Russia by Trump, Biden gave as many green lights as possible before retiring. I just gave you from very, very, from very secretive sources that operate like that movie Inside Out, inside of Biden's brain, which at this point, if you watch the movie, it's like, a lot of different creatures that exist inside of your brain that monitor different emotions, thoughts, patterns. In Biden, there's nothing. It's just dark. And there's like flickers, and it turns on, and he's like, "Oh my fucking god, Brezhnev, I will fucking kill you!" Like, he's
just got one emotion, and it's dementia, and he's just like playing jacks by himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And to end November, we asked who must go. We thought the answer would be 2024, but no, to our surprise, it was the man who never goes, Al-Assad. Yeah, I mean, it's recent. Most of you probably know, but in a sweeping overtake of the country by different unified rebel or terrorist organizations, depending on who you ask, Al-Assad was ousted from the country with confirmed Turkish support, but also highly likely American and even Israeli assistance. A new Syrian government was born under the now massively whitewashed, like the definition of whitewash, suit wearing
Zelensky
AliExpress Zelensky, Timu Zelensky, Mr. Ahmed al-Shara, with the American bounty on his head now removed, will carefully watch the direction Syria ends up being steered towards in the coming years. and decades. I don't know, like it's very recent. Maybe it's not going to be recent for those watching, but have you seen him in a proper suit and tie, like fully fucking fleshed out? Ooh, it's PR used to be a lot more like, indirect and shit. But these kids now running these fucking agencies, they're like, you know how the whites will like him. Put him in a suit, and that's literally what they do. And I'm like, holy fucking shit! Like this is too in
Apple
your face,
Watch and all.
even for me, man. Oh Lord. But yes, that was November. All the doomsday clocks ticking like more than a couple of seconds closer to midnight, and I for one would absolutely embrace it at this point.
Speaking of getting closer to midnight, we're getting close to the new year, and that means that it is December. And for the December month, we're not recording this at the end of the month, so there's still like a week to go. So nuclear war. Let's see.
One more event.
Like we can get
last Deprogram episode. The last Deprogram episode.
We'll get it. We'll get one of the buzzer. But we already mentioned the South Korean coup attempt. Or not coup attempt, excuse me, martial law, and the South Korean president, or prime minister, excuse me, was trying to... No, it was the president, excuse me.
Was that December? Wasn't that November?
November to December, kind of, because there were whisperings of it. But regardless, the President Yoon Suk-yeol wanted to essentially impose martial law to get rid of his political opponents and start war with North Korea and all this kind of stuff. And now he's being impeached. And he is basically the... South Korean Trump, quote unquote. I hate this nomenclature for people of other countries, but it gives you an idea of what kind of people they are. And this guy essentially
Trump was a trendsetter. Like it's cringe, but like Milei is an Argentinian Trump. This guy is a South, like it's he set the standard, he's the original. Nobody can copy the original, but he's definitely an inspiration, and I don't think that can be denied.
Yeah. Regardless, now he's being investigated for the crime that he's tried to commit, essentially. And
crime of listening to his wife.
Exactly right.
Who the fuck does that?
Oh my god.
On our lovely segment, which we need to include in every episode, we need to call it France Stay Losing. Chad cuts military agreements with France, which is beautiful. What Chad is trying to do is reassert its full sovereignty, and as a result, they're essentially cutting military cooperation with France and telling them to basically get the fuck out of Chad, which is incredibly based. This follows Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso doing similar things. This is incredibly beautiful events. The more France loses, the better I sleep at night. So I'm incredibly happy that this is happening. Moving on to horrible news, there is a certain charity that works in Gaza that's called the World Central Kitchen, which is a charity that basically provides food for people exactly right to Gazans. And Israel has been directly targeting these people and has assassinated many of its cooks and people delivering this form of aid. But after basically a car just carrying staff for this kitchen, who was these are known to be a valid source of humanitarian aid, exactly right, was directly hit by the Israelis, and it killed 5 people, I believe, in this particular strike. But a bunch of other strikes have killed many others. This has resulted essentially with cessation of all activities by this, because they don't have people to work because they've all been killed. And what's even more fucked up is some of the people who had been working, had been previously attacked by Israel, survived their injuries and continued working with shrapnel injuries and all this kind of stuff. That's how beautiful by the way, there were Western citizens, there's British citizens and whatnot included in this, so Israel doesn't give a fuck, right? And these governments who will throw a shit fit about I don't know, like Somalia or whatever, kidnapping an American citizen or British citizen, they don't care. You can kill 30 British citizens as long as it's Israel doing it. It's okay. This is a price that's that's absolutely disgusting.
Immune to everything, literally everything.
No, exactly right. Moving on, this is these are the two most interesting stories of and popular stories of this week. The first one was the German Christmas market attack, where a guy rammed his car into a German Christmas market and killed a bunch of people. Talib El Abdul Muhsin was the guy's name. Now you're reading this like, oh, it's an Islamic attack, terrorist attack, and that's what everybody thought, of course, because there's this bullshit stereotype. And what is it, like terrorism, when terrorist related headlines are like 90% represented as quote unquote Muslims, despite the fact that the vast majority of terrorism around the world is far right terrorism. They're heavily overrepresented in carrying out terrorism, but they're strongly underrepresented in reporting of terrorism. Like something that, like 10% or 5% are reported on. It's an insane amount. Regardless, this was plastered all over the world's newspapers because they assumed that it was like a terror attack caused by some Islamic extremists of some kind, as if even that term exists. All these people are usually byproducts of American-founded and American-funded groups, right? It's arguable to say that if imperialism never existed, these groups would never exist either, so on and so forth. But regardless, that's what they thought it was. But then it turns out it was a far-right, like anti-religious, anti-Islam, white supremacist Saudi exile, which the Saudi government has been telling Germany to send him back to Saudi Arabia to face charges for certain crimes. And they were also warned to the German government that this guy has extremist tendencies, and they didn't care until he decided to do this. And he did this basically as a wake-up call against the Islamization. I'm not saying that right.
Tough word, yeah. Islamicization, yeah.
There you go, thank you. Of Germany, which is not something that's happening, by the way.
Yeah, that's why you don't need to know how to pronounce it, because
it's not a real thing. Exactly right.
That's as close to a real thing.
The German government got the report about this guy.
Yeah.
This brown man is okay.
Exactly right.
He's not bad.
Yeah, and this, what's it called? Rammed his car into a bunch of people, used this as a terrorist attack to be against anti-Muslims, anti-immigrants, and all that kind of stuff. And immediately, once this information came out, nobody's reporting on it.
Gone.
They stopped immediately, which goes to show you, of course, the racism of this. But also, what's beautiful is that the far right has ran with this shit. And they're like, no, he was a secret Muslim, or he was a secret agent, a sleeper cell, just all sorts of strange brainworms, when this guy had been posting for his entire life about white supremacist shit. He's pro-Israel, identifies personally as a Zionist, so on and so forth. So there you go. This was
they can't pull back. They already knotted. They knotted in their white supremacists too hard, because they posted everywhere because it was too perfect. Saudi Arabia. And, oh, look at that name. It just flows off the tongue. Oh, a Christmas market. Of course, rest in peace to the people that died. I'm not making fun of them, of course. But it's like mwah, mwah. For them, like these great European patriots, most of them not even from Europe, they're in the fucking US, don't even care about these quote unquote white lives, whatever that means, that have been lost. No, they want they jumped in ecstasy when these Europeans that identify with so much ended up dying at the hand of this fucking degenerate, as we've learned about him. They crave it because that allows them to give you the type of pitch that they want.
Lets them justify their race war nonsense.
But now, because they knotted too hard into it, they can't pull out, and now they have to go full conspiracy theory. That fucking sleeper cell. Come the fuck on. It's like the reverse thing. The fucking with the like, oh, aliens are coming now, so we don't talk about the big topics of today. But my favorite Twitter post was like, oh no, they are doing this stuff in Germany and with Luigi and with Assad so that we don't pay attention to the alien drones. The reverse was like, wow, like holy shit! I love humans. I love humans.
Oh man! And the final story, which is literally breaking news as of when I'm reporting on this, it's that Trump threatened to try to regain control of the Panama Canal the same day that he's saying that Greenland should belong to the United States. So this is the president incumbent, or whatever the fuck, the guy who's coming in, president-elect, whatever you guys
Canada,
say.
Ours. Mexico, ours. Greenland, apparently ours. I'll take it.
And by the way, this is more of his shit talk. He's not going to do anything, most likely. No. But he said the fees being charged by Panama are ridiculous, highly unfair. This complete ripoff of our country will immediately stop, of course, when he takes office. What is this supposed to exactly mean? The implication is that they're kind of like, I guess, going to take over the Panama Canal. If shipping rates are not lowered, Trump said, we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to us in full, quickly, and without question.
I got the biggest canal, the most beautiful canal. I can't wait for it. Oh, Lord. I mean, no, please don't do it. But yes.
He can't even lower grocery price.
Yeah.
That's a bad argument because America can allow its people to starve while mass murdering other people. That's kind of what it's most optimized for. So
that's our specialty.
Yeah.
And by the way, about the Greenland thing, Greenland said yet again to Trump that it is not for sale. So too bad. No, so that's what's happening in the world as of 2024. Boys, what a year.
It was kind of a shit year, honestly. There were some highs. There's some real high highs in the latter half, I will say. Very, very good slop for the trough. We've worked hard, fellas. I think we've done a good job here. We dropped some killer merch. We've burned the midnight oil, especially you boys. I mean, as you can see, dear video viewers, it's very dark in my room now. I pulled up just white on Google, so my laptop will illuminate me because I can't find the clicker for the overhead light. But yeah, we hope you had a passable 2024. We hope you're healthy and well. Hope your family's doing all right. Hug your mamas, hug your papas, all that. Call your family, tell them you love them. Because you never know when we're all going to get nuked.
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever you need to do, whatever makes your heart full. But again, we'd like to thank you all for your support throughout the year. We love doing these for you guys.
Absolutely.
The patrons, we could not do this without you. Genuinely, we love each and every one of our beautiful little piggies. Many soft pats on the head, little kisses on your soft little ears. But boys, unless you have anything else, I think we call it a wrap on the year of our Lord 2024. What do you say?
Of course. That we should. And of course. And of course.
With all that being said, this has been the Deprogram. I'm JT.
I'm Hakeem.
I'm your Gopnik.
We'll see you next year.
Next year's gonna be worse.
Hey, let's go.